Welcome back to the Python series, and I'm going to teach you guys about variable length arguments. First, we have this here. This is a special keyword within Python that allows you to collect positional arguments into a tuple for a function parameter. So that probably didn't make any sense, so let me just show you. So I'm going to do define, I'm going to say sum numbers, and to this I'm going to provide star asterisk args. Okay, so what this allows you to do is anytime you call the sum numbers function that we've defined, you can pass in as many numbers as you want to this. So I guess we could start with an alternative. We could say num1, num2, num3, num4. We could do something like that. And now we want to sum all those things, so we could do return num1 plus num2 plus num3 plus num4, right? So this is a simple function that takes in 4 different parameters and sums them together and returns the result. The issue with this is that obviously it's not very dynamic. We can pass in 4, but not less than 4 and not greater than 4. You could make it so that it expects a list. You could pass in a list of numbers and sum those. That's definitely an option for sure. But with this variable length argument keyword here, you can pass in literally as many as you want, and it will be collected into a single tuple. So if you hover over this, it says parameter args, and it's a type of tuple with unknown values inside of it. Because of Python typing, it can be whatever you want, but it's a tuple though that collects everything together. Okay, we'll start by saying sum is equal to 0, and then a tuple can actually be looped through just like a list would be. So we could do for number in args. So you can refer to it just by the name args instead of star args. And now we can do sum plus equals number. So it's just going to add all of them together. And then at the very end, we're just going to return sum. So let's see how we can call this now. We'll do sum numbers. And then now we could do 1, 10, 23, literally as many numbers as you want, which is really cool, right? And so now when we call this, let's print out args. So we could take a look. Let's run it. Boom. So we get printed out a tuple with all the values that we passed in. And so like I said, it's going to loop through each of the values of the tuple and then sum them together and return it. So we can print out the sum of this whole operation here. There we go, we get 145,000. So star args collects positional arguments into a tuple. And hopefully it's clear to you guys the benefit of using this. You can pass in as many as you want, and you don't have to be fixed to a certain number of parameters or having to pass in a list. A list is totally valid because a list is very similar to a tuple, but this makes it just way more concise. So you can see that I can pass in as many as I want, but you can actually just pass in nothing. Let's take a look. Let's run it. So we get an empty tuple and then 0. So it accepts 0 or more, which is cool. What is cool is that you can actually mix this together with regular parameters. So if we define another function like greet and sum, we do greeting, and then we could do start args again. And we'll do print greeting since that one is a required parameter. And now this is going to be, again, a tuple of 0 or more values passed in. So if I want to, I can just sum it together like I did before. Or if you want to, just as a little interesting thing that you may need, you can do if args. This will check to see if it's empty or not. So if it's not empty, it'll be true. So then you could do whatever you want with it. And then else, of course, this means that it is empty. So we can say print no numbers provided. So again, if it's not empty, what we want to do now is sum all the stuff passed into this since we're trying to sum. So we could just call the other function that we already defined. So we could do sum numbers and pass in args. However, there's one thing. This is a tuple, right? Whenever you pass in values into the greet and sum function and the function's actually running, this is a tuple of values, right? But when you actually call a function that uses star args, it's not asking for a tuple. It's just asking for a collection of arguments that will be passed into the parameter, right? Like this. So just separated by commas. So it doesn't take a tuple. That's invalid code. So you need to make sure that you unpack it. So this will unpack the tuple into the individual parameters that you can then pass in, okay? So it's just a little small thing that you need to make sure that you do. If you do transfer the tuple from star args into another function that uses star args, okay? And this is how you would call it. So here's some examples. Every one of them needs a greeting because that's the required parameter. And then after that, you could provide a variable length list of numbers. So as many as you want, 0 or more to the function. So let's run it. There we go. We get hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hi there, 10, 20. Good morning, no numbers provided. Another thing to keep in mind is that star args is a common name used for this. It's just a convention, but you can call it whatever you want. It could just be called numbers. So you just have to prepend it with a star, but the name itself does not matter. So we could replace all that with numbers. There we go. Okay, so that was star args for collecting positional arguments into a tuple. We also have star kwargs. I've never heard this. Wait, listen, hear me out. I've never heard this actually pronounced out loud. So I usually read it, so I don't know how to actually say it. How do people usually say it? So I just call it kwargs. But what it does is instead of collecting positional arguments into a tuple, it's going to collect keyword arguments into a dictionary. And I think if you think about this, actually makes a lot of sense. So positional arguments are just arguments that you pass in as comma separated list, right? So the natural way to collect that into a single thing is a tuple or maybe a list, right? So they chose tuple. And so we learned last time when we learned about keyword arguments that keyword arguments are passed in by doing, for example, this. So greeting is equal to hello. And so this actually looks very familiar to what we learned about when we learned about dictionaries, which are key value pairs. So this is the key and this is the value. So with that said, if we were to take a bunch of keyword arguments and collect it into one sort of entity, the natural way to do that would be a dictionary. So it's going to be a dictionary with every key value pair to represent the keyword arguments that you pass in, okay? Pretty cool, right? So that's why it's called kwargs. It's keyword arguments, okay? So let's make a function that uses kwargs, keyword arguments. We'll say create profile, and so we're going to pass in kwargs. And of course, it doesn't have to be called kwargs. It's just a common convention, all right? So we're going to first print it out. Just take a look at the dictionary that is created from this. And what's cool is that we can literally pass whatever we want into this, right? We're going to be creating a dictionary dynamically depending on whatever we pass in. So we can pass in a name, we can pass in an age, we can pass in a favorite color. So now if I run this, we get a dictionary, as you can see, name, Bill, age 25, favorite color, red. There we go. So here's some better examples. We're going to create some profiles here. Alice, 25, from New York, username, email, is active, title, manager, department, salary, experience. These are different ways of creating profiles dynamically using different types of data. So the benefits of this, of course, is that the function's way more dynamic. It can accept different values of different names and values and stuff like that. And it doesn't have to be hard-coded to accept a username, email, or is active, or a name, or an age, or a city, or a title, department, salary, experience. It can be dynamically passed in. So you're going to see these in actual programs more often than you would expect. This is for generally situations where you want to accept information sort of dynamically that you don't want to hard code into the function a parameter definition, okay? So just like regular star args, we can combine regular parameters with star args. We can do the same thing with kwargs or keyword arguments. So here's a pretty solid example that you might actually see in a program. Create user. So this create user function is going to take in a username. This is a required regular parameter. So every user we create needs a username, and then everything else that the user may have for their account could be different from other people's. So we're going to take in a variable list of keyword arguments. So this can be thought of as the metadata for the user. So it can take in their age, where they're from, all kinds of information, and it can depend from user to user. So that's why it's useful to provide it as just keyword arguments instead of explicitly defining it for every user, okay? So here's some examples. Every one of these needs a username, and then after that, the information can vary depending on the person. So I really hope this is making sense so far, guys. This is a really cool concept. If you want to, you can also mix them all together. So if you want to have regular arguments and then variable arguments and then keyword variable arguments, you can do that. You just need to make sure that it's in this exact order here of regular arguments, or parameters rather, star args and star kwargs, okay? That's all you gotta do. Just make sure it's in that order and you should be fine. And that's all I want to show you guys for this episode. Hopefully it wasn't too much and the concept makes sense to you guys. It's pretty cool. It's something, like I said, that you'll see more often than you would expect. So now you guys should be prepared to actually deal with them. So that was variable length arguments in Python. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you guys next time, and peace.